Hello, in this video, we will look at how to declare, how to throw, and how to catch exceptions. This is the overall picture. You have this try catch. You're going to invoke this method that potentially through exception. So this method here is declared to throw exception. Inside the method, if this condition occurs, then you're going to throw exception. So that's the overall picture of the exception handling. Let's look at declaring exception. Using the keyword throws, this method declares that it may throw this exception. It's called IO exception. A method may throw multiple exceptions. Here is throws with all these exceptions separated by commas. Throwing exception is to create an exception object, then using this keyword through. So here is illegal argument exception, new illegal argument exception. You can combine this in one line, just say through new illegal argument exception. Catching exceptions using try catch. You can have multiple catches. Catch exception 1, 2, and many. This diagram shows how the exception is handled in the multiple method calling. So this is the main method that invokes method 1. Method 1 invokes method 2. In method 2, method invokes method 3. That has a problem now. Exception occurs. So first, look at this try catch, see if this exception can be called. If so, we're going to process it and then execute this statement 6. If this cannot be called, it will throw back to its caller. So the caller will look at the catch and see if it cannot be called and go back to the main. If it cannot be called in the main, so that's going to be, the program is going to be terminated. You can see all this method here. The way it is done here is the call stack. So here's method 3. So this is on the top. If the exception cannot be handled, so the method 3 exits and go into method 2 and going down. So this is the exception propagation. When you have the multiple catches, so please, you have to put the subtype before the supertype. So this is wrong. So you first catch exception, that's not right because this runtime exception is a subtype of exception. So you have to do it differently. You have to first put runtime exception before exception. First check if this is runtime exception, then check exception. For this, you have this P1. P1 invokes P2. P2 may throw exception. So you have this IO exception. Now, this is the checked exception. So we need to look at this, in Java exception handling, the runtime exception. All things on the runtime exception is called unchecked exception. All the other exceptions are checked exception. Checked exception must be dealt with either in the try catch or you can just declare it right here, P2 through IO exception. Then you can call this P1 through IO exception. Then you can call this P2. That's fine. So P2 may potentially throw IO exception, so he declared. The other way is here, you put in the try catch. So that's the checked exception. Since JDK 7, you can have this multiple exceptions to be put in this way. Catch exception 1 or exception 2 or go on. So in this order, so that is fine. You can get the information from exception. This is the throughable, is the root for all the exceptions. So you get message, a toString, print stack trace, get stack trace. Now let's look at this test program. So when you write a code, you have something like this, test exception. So let's look at this, all the output is coming from, where they're coming from, okay? So we're gonna use all these methods here now, in this throughable, get message, toString, print stack, get stack trace. So let's do this. I'm gonna use this is try catch. So catch this exception here is the print this sum with all this elements in the array. So this is the array. So now mistake is met right here. So there's exception right here. Equals, it should be less than, I is less than, and so now if it equals and you have the array index out of bounds exception. And when that exception happens, see, what we do is this, ex.print stack trace. So the print stack trace will print all these methods now you have invoked. The main, sum, and now here is the array index out of bounds exception in the sum method. And now we're gonna print this get message. So get message will get you this is 5. So that's index 5 is the problem. And toString is going to have this is java.len.array index out of bounds exception 5. And this is more here is you're going to use this get stack trace. Here is the array of stack trace element. So for each of the stack trace element, so we're going to print this get method name. And so this is the get the method name. And this will get the trace elements. So that's all the detailed trace elements. See, this is all of this throughable you can use. Let's look at one example now with all this put together, declaring, throwing, and catching exceptions. So I have this so-called with exception. Here is so-called with exception. So we're going to add this in the so-called class with exception. It's in the set radius. So what I'm going to do is, let's do this set radius. Let's just say I'm going to declare throughs. Let's say I'm going to use in this illegal argument exception. So put right here. If new radius is greater than or equal to 0, so I'm going to throw this illegal argument exception. So the radius cannot be negative. Otherwise, I'm going to assign new radius into radius. So this is, here is, if this radius, new radius is negative through this exception. Now let's write a test program. Here, this is the test program. We can create new circle with exception. So that's C1, C2, C3. So for C2 now, it's -5. So once this happens, so look at this here. It is this, okay? This one here set the radius, and that was through this exception now. So the exception is going to be called here. It's illegal argument exception, EX, and I'm going to print out what is EX is. All right, so it's caught right here. And now let's see how many objects we have created. So this is the number of objects created. It is this right here, circle with exception dot get number of objects. So this get number of objects. It is 1 because you did not create C2, you failed. So right here, see, this is exception occurred. So this number of objects is not increased. And here, C3 is skipped. See, the only thing created is the C1. So that's the number of objects there. That is all for this video. Thank you for watching. See you on the next video.